In this video, I'm going to talk about how to change your identity as a man. And I want to keep it super short for you, just focusing on the fundamental things. Now, when you want to change as a man, you have to realize, firstly, what you're doing currently, right? Because you have to recognize what you're doing wrong. Once you've identified, and I would recommend writing it down on a piece of paper of who you are right now and what you're doing wrong, I would just recommend then finding out who you want to become and get crystal clear. And it might take 3 hours to sit down and actually think of who you actually want to become. And I've done that before. I've sat there for 3 to 4 hours and with a pen and paper. The first 2 hours it was completely blank, but then eventually I started writing out who I wanted to become, and I had a clear few paragraphs of exactly the man I wanted to become. And from there, I could compare what I was doing now and the man who I am now to the man I wanted to become. And then I could see all the gaps. And then I asked myself, I asked myself, like, why wasn't I achieving the goals that I wanted? Why wasn't I being the man who I wanted to be? Why were my relationships failing? Why was nothing going according to plan? It was quite simple, actually, because I wasn't operating as the man I wanted to become. I thought I was, but I never gave myself the time to sit down and reflect of who I was becoming. Because every morning when I woke up, I was operating in a fight or flight state of mind, and I was just on autopilot, getting the work done. Yes, I was earning money, but I was on autopilot, not even thinking, just doing. And sometimes that's good, but also that leaves room for your self-sabotaging behaviors and vices to slip through your foundation, because your foundation becomes rocky. It may have been solid in the come up, but it would have been cracked through the periods of you being on autopilot and not being consciously aware of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's very, very important to get a very crystal clear image of who you want to become and who you don't want to become. Now you understand that. The next thing is actually taking action. So I would say the most fundamental thing is, if you're not in shape, I think it's legitimately, if you had 3 of the major pillars in your life, it's health, mindset, spirituality. If you don't have your health on lock and you're not in incredible shape, if you don't have a disability or you don't have anything wrong with you and you can actually go to the gym, that is why your life isn't how you want it to be honest. Because you're pretty much playing life on easy mode when you're in shape. When you're in shape, you are playing life on easy mode. And I'm not even kidding you. You go through my Instagram, go look at my other YouTube videos, you would see me being out of shape versus me being in shape right now. And if you go on my Instagram, you can see what kind of shape I'm in. But I was an absolute retard for being out of shape and not taking my health seriously, because I have more confidence, I have more energy, no brain fog. I can attract the people in my life who I actually want because I'm taking care of myself, because you are what you attract, right? You attract what you are, sorry. And just in how I look at myself as well in the mirror, because I know I'm putting in the work, and I look at myself and I see what I've built, and I respect myself even more. Because when I wasn't taking my health seriously, I would wake up in the morning, look at myself in the mirror and think, what the heck am I doing with my life? And then what happens is you go down that spiral, and then it becomes pointless. Then you just focus on work and you think money is going to solve the issue, when it never does, because you're always going to have that hole. Trust me on that. So the next thing is taking care of your health. Now, the third thing is understanding your self-sabotaging behaviors and triggers. Because you can be in shape, you can get a clear image of who you want to become. But if you don't understand how you operate subconsciously and what triggers you, you're always going to be reacting emotionally over logically. And you might even be thinking right now, no, that's not me. I operate very logically. Trust me, when was the last time something negative happened and then you instantly got the urge to go to a vice and then you fell into it? Then you're thinking the next day, why did I even do that? And the only reason I know that is because I've been there personally, brother. So I know. But as soon as I understood why those things were triggering me and I understood where it was coming from, and funnily enough, it was deriving from my childhood, majority of it, I was able to recognize the triggers. And I like to use this visual thing in my mind, or let's just call it an analogy in my brain when I have to choose the good option every single time. So every time you are about to give into a self-sabotaging behavior or a vice that you don't want to give into, you have to cross a bridge. You either cross the bridge to become the guy you want to be, who doesn't give in the vice, or you cross the bridge of the guy that gives into the vice. So when I get put into that situation where I feel like the urge to give into a vice comes up, or a self-sabotaging behavior, I look at myself from a third person perspective, right? And I first recognize where it's coming from. And then the second thing is I picture myself in a black pit, right? And then I remind myself of my why. Why am I doing this? Why shouldn't I give into this temptation right now? What is it going to cause later on down the track, and how is it going to make me feel? Then that is a glowing rope what goes into the pit. And then this is actually what I do in my mind. I picture myself climbing up the rope. And as I'm climbing up the rope, when I get out of the pit, then I'm magically back to my senses and I don't give into my self-sabotaging behavior. But I had to do that just to become really self-aware what was happening in my life, because so many people, men and women, just live their life on autopilot, and they live their life on fight or flight and just constantly reacting. And you have to come up with your own thing that stops you in that moment so you can choose the best option every single time. Because if you're not choosing the best option every single time, you're clearly choosing the opposite option, which is why you probably clicked on this video, or why you're struggling with certain areas of your life. It could be your relationship, finances, business, whatever it may be. But it's probably because you're reacting emotionally instead of thinking logically and doing the correct thing. And if you just choose the correct thing every single time, obviously we're going to fail sometimes, but as much as you can, you're going to be a much better man or a human being in general. And a lot of things are going to start coming your way and coming to fruition that didn't before, because you're operating a different frequency and you're choosing the better option every single time. So those are the three things I would highly recommend you implement to actually make the change. And if you generally feel stuck and you want some help, I'm going to leave a call link in the description. And if you feel like you have any other questions about getting into shape, changing your identity, or whatever it might be, my Instagram is going to be in the description as well. So just send me a message on there and I'll just reply to you personally. But I hope this video, or this short video, gave you some value and you can actually apply a lot of the stuff, what I said into it. And I'm telling you, if you apply what I said, it's going to change your life.